endurance, we can look at that.
What else? The
And
body,
the body composition.
Okay.
Just those 4 broad topics, broad headings.
Okay.
Can you hear anything like a radio in my background here?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Not yet. Soon.
The body.
What you have for sports buzz? I don't have much.
Yeah, I only have those things that I talk about. We're just going to touch on them briefly because the topic is so deep. We will talk about Ronaldinho and we'll talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, about his contract that he got. And then we also can talk about Ashanti Moore, a little bit about her getting ready to sign with Adidas.
Okay.
Okay, you guys are live now, okay?
We are live. I think we're live now. Think we're live.
Hello and welcome once again to KCJC Sports Talk Show. I am Ken Connell and my co-host is...
Yeah, I'm John Campbell, live and direct from Kingston, Jamaica.
Yes, I just want to say Happy New Year to everybody and thanks to each and every one of you who have subscribed to the Ruseas Brosis YouTube channel. We surely appreciate all your comments and we are inviting more comments for the new year because we're trying to grow as much as we can. The more the comments, the better the growth.
Indeed. So what is going on your end, Ken? Sports-wise?
Before we get into that, John, you know, we pretty much want to let the listeners know that this evening topic is very interesting, so they might want to get some pen and paper to do some calculation. Yeah, but sports-wise, John, I know what's buzzing in sport right now. It's all about finance right now. It's all about the money. So, first of all, I want to address an issue with Ronaldinho. I don't know if most of our listeners are aware of the fact that he had to serve some time in jail for a fraudulent passport. I think he was in Paraguay. And
yes, we heard about that.
So he actually was fined. And if he could have paid the fine, I think it was about $250,000, then he would be able to walk free. But he wasn't able to pay the fine. So as a result of that, he was jailed for a few months. And his good buddy, you know, showed up with the money. Samuel Eto'o showed up with the money, and so he was released. And immediately after he was released, John, very interesting, he became a millionaire immediately after he was released.
How so?
Yes, sir. He was in the music business, and he also had a gin that he was making. It was supposed to be organic. And so immediately after he came out, as a result of all of what he had in front of him before he went into jail. And also, the Brazilian Prime Minister had appointed him as some ambassador. So as a result of all of these things and the advertisement that surround these things, he became an instant millionaire. You know, there is also news about Cristiano Ronaldo. The guy now joins Michael Jordan and LeBron James. He now signed a $1 billion contract. A $1 billion, it's a lifetime contract. So he now joins LeBron and Michael Jordan as the only 3 athletes with a lifetime contract. Now, remember, this guy was already worth over $450 million. You know, so
Right,
it's
right.
all with money right now. And our own local star, Ashanti Moore from Hydale High School.
Oh yes, how is she doing?
Well, first of all, good news. She's just getting ready to put on paper a contract with Adidas.
Ah, that's a big thing, man.
I get that's taken away from some of the fun memory of what I saw. I mean, the loss that we had because we weren't able to see that clash between herself and Kivona Davis the
Oh
2020.
yeah, right. Because
No,
you're
we
no
were
longer
living our
here,
track.
eh?
The love is a track of feel like myself. I'd already bought my ticket to go and see this clash, and I wasn't able to see it. So this kind of adds some joy to the whole thing, even though we haven't had a chance to see them both, but yet they're given opportunity. And the news is that she's going to be joining the same camp that Veronica Campbell was with,
Okay.
the same camp where Tyson Gay was at. You know what I mean? So we're expecting to hear some great things from her. You know, looking back at her time in the 100 meter, I think it was 11.17 compared to Kivona. It was certainly going to be a showdown. Unfortunately, COVID ripped this all away from us. But you know, this brought back some excitement, at least to know that she is on the verge of signing a professional contract and is going to be making some money.
It certainly argues well for all the professional athletes in terms of making sport worth your while, as a career choice and doing well with
Very
that
much
as
so.
well. But I just you spoke about the COVID issue, and again, it's also wreaking havoc with our netball, the Sunshine Girls. They were supposed to tour England in the coming month. But again, it has been put off because, England is under pressure with COVID. So the tour mightn't go on. So the Sunshine Girls are still here, still training, but we can't play the match. We can't play the matches. But mind you, the athletes who are in New Zealand and Australia, the Jamaican netballers who are playing for professional, they are actually doing quite well. I mean, being top scorers and leading, scorers answering their leagues. So, I kind of sorry for the Sunshine Girls, man. They need to be out there on the, at the global level, playing more professional type netball. But so it is.
Very much so.
So it
But
is.
yeah, but very much so. But it's just like the way it is. We just gotta deal with the situation as it confronts us in this time. But hopefully, 2021 is gonna be somewhat different. Have you heard anything about boys and girls
Boys
championship?
and girls champs still in the pipeline. We're still hoping to have it at the usual time that we announced. That was, I think, March, later March, thereabouts. It seems to be a go, although we have had this new strain of the coronavirus entering the island from out of England. So we don't know how much that will impact our ability to host the meet. But I suspect all should be well, because I think things should be under control and things should start to settle down in another couple of months or so. So I look forward to boys and girls championships. I think it should be all right.
Okay, good. So is Doc still gonna join us later on in the program?
Yes, Dialogue Brown. He should be joining us. So we can talk more about the issues of assessment and testing, sports testing. Am I correct? Yes.
Evaluation, testing,
Yeah.
assessment, same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So this,
just to make it known that the last program spoke about preseason evaluation, but that was more on a medical perspective when we were checking first the athletes' heart response and blood pressure and neurological systems and so on. This is a little bit different now. Am I correct?
yeah, this the PPE or the preseason physical exam pretty much detect specific health problems, but it does not provide an insight as to how fit the athlete is. So this is what we're going to cover. So we want our listeners to know that though they sound very much alike, they're totally different. One is actually looking at any direct or specific health problems that the athlete has. But in this segment, we're going to be covering
just fitness testing,
fitness testing, an assessment of how fit the athlete is, so that we can pretty much design training plan to prevent them from succumbing to any kind of injuries and so forth. But before we go into that, this segment of our program,
let's go ahead.
Yeah, this segment of our program is brought to us by Learning Together Mathematics Tutorial Section, live on our YouTube channel, Tuesday and Thursday of each week, 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The host is none other than Mr. Desmond Dunkley. Go ahead, John.
Big up, Desmond. Big up. No, I was just saying that with regards to fitness testing, I want to suspect that most schools, especially those schools who intend to play, let's say, Doncaster Cup and Manning Cup later on, a lot of them should be getting, just about now, kind of rallying their players together to do basic screening first of all, and then later on to get into, more fitness testing during this off-season, period.
Thank you.
So I want to say that the coaches and so who are perhaps listening to us should take good notes in terms of what they ought to be doing in preparing their teams.
Absolutely.
Because we're talking about youngsters here especially,
And I'm glad you made mention that this is normally conducted during the off season. It's normally conducted during the off season.
And there are good reasons for that too, right? Yeah, I mean, because you can now make the necessary corrections, should I say, or adjustments to the, any shortfall in the athlete's capacity. They will have athletes coming in who are otherwise talented but tight, or otherwise talented but generally weak in his upper body. And this is the time now when you can zone in to those weaknesses or shortcomings and fix them before the season starts, before the actual season starts, and of course you're trying to prevent injuries along the way, and this is a time now to do that, so
absolutely. Yeah. And this is not a joking matter, because that's where I'm going to leave most of it to you guys who are more clinical than I am, because most people do not understand that this is something that should be conducted by a trained professional, such as an athletic trainer or a certified strength or conditioning coach. You can do it also with a certified strength and conditioning coach. So this is not a joke matter at all. It's something that, depending on what sport you're going to play, we need to know exactly where is your fitness level. So so that we can design training plans to prevent injuries, like I said before.
Yeah. Critical. And let me just add quickly that in making these plans, it's planned based on the individual as well, because you'll have a team of, let's say, 16 persons, 16 different players with all different abilities, all different levels of, again, weaknesses or shortcomings. And, you need to bring them back up to more or less on a same level in terms of their fitness, in terms of their strength, in terms of their flexibility, all these things, so that you can have a well-groomed, well-rounded team, set of people, players.
And also, may I add that, again, this is to allow the coach to focus on specific areas of weakness.
Right, exactly so.
because so if depending on each athlete, depending on the sport that we're talking about, each athlete should therefore be evaluated for strength. They should be evaluated for flexibility. They should be evaluated for endurance, and they should be evaluated for like body composition or percentage fat.
Yes,
These are some of the
absolutely.
key areas. Of course, John, that we could have gone into a lot more detail. This is a very complex area. But
Oh yeah.
we're just going to look on these areas. We're going to look at strength. We're going to look at flexibility or tightness. We're going to look at endurance. And we're going to look at body composition or body fat, percentage body fat.
I guess the question, when we get into it, but the question would be asked, for instance, like body fat. Somebody would ask the question, why is body fat of any significance to any sport? And there are some sports where if your body fat passes a certain level, there's no way that you can compete. And we can use the classic one, bodybuilding. Bodybuilding. That strives on the least body fat that you can carry on stage. And this is where we spoke about this earlier. This is where these athletes sometimes use prohibited substances to help them to to lose this and to lose water and to lose body fat at a more rapid rate, so they can look very, very lean.
Another
let me just finish the point though. As opposed to, I don't know if you know sumo wrestling. You watch sumo wrestling, and these are guys that are like 300 pounds of lard, like fat. And that is their sport. You cannot get into a sport like that looking like me, you just won't survive in a sport like that. So it depends on the sport and the requirements of the particular sport,
Yeah, here in America, they have wrestling is very popular in high school. Not sumo wrestling, but the regular wrestling is very popular. So that's another sport where the percentage body fat would be very important. Also, if you look at gymnasts, this would be also very important for gymnasts and track and field athletes also. Track and field athletes also. It would be very important for these guys. So do you want to start off, John, by talking? Are we waiting until dialogue comes?
I'm going to invite Dr. Brown now to come in.
So while we're waiting on Dr. Brown, this segment of our program is brought to you by Learning Together, English language tutorial session, live on Ruseas Brosis YouTube channel on Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Your host is Miss Dawn Dawes.
Yeah. Hello, Rudolph Brown, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. You guys hear me well?
Yes. Happy New Year to you, man.
Yes, Happy New Year to you both. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Thank you, sir. Glad to have you again, sir. Glad to have you again.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Good. Yeah. Yeah, man. Before you came, we're just kind of warming up the topic a little bit, because what we're really going to be talking about is basically baseline testing. A couple of weeks ago we spoke about the preseason evaluation, which was more on a more medical perspective.
Right.
Blood works and heart response and neurological systems and so on. This time we want to focus more on fitness testing. How strong you are, how flexible you are, your level of endurance, and even issues of body fat, which, as we were saying before you came on, that your body fat is sometimes critical for some sport, whether more of it or less of it. And we were using the examples of bodybuilding, where the least body fat you have going on stage, the better you are.
Absolutely.
Sumo wrestling, You know, the more fat you have on your boy, then you stand a better chance of surviving the encounter. So that's where we are. But I think I'll perhaps ask Ken to just introduce the topic. What is it that we're going to be looking at right now, Ken?
Okay, so Doc, we're going to be paying attention to, like he said, we're going to be paying attention to fitness assessment for sport, total fitness assessment for sport. Here in America, they call it the FAST assessment, or they call it, they have a sheet that they call a FAST sheet where you record everything on it. Right. Every single area that you look into, you record it. So on the sheet, you would see areas like strength assessment, you would see flexibility or tightness assessment, you would also see endurance assessment, you'll definitely see body composition or percentage fat assessment. It gets a little bit more detailed, but so that we do not confuse our listeners and make it very complicated for them to get the main section, we'll just focus on those four. We'll just focus on strength, flexibility, endurance, and body composition.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Let me start the ball rolling because I love the issue and the topic of strength training, as you well know, Diallo. Right. Because I find it's critical for any sport. Critical in terms of performance, one, and perhaps where we are concerned most, critical in terms of prevention of injuries,
yes.
or in the event of an injury, the fast rehabilitation, Right. There's times when, because you have adequate strength, what could have been a third-degree strain is perhaps a first-degrry strain, so it's easier to treat and easier to rehab. And that all boils down to sometimes how strong your tissues are. Right. But in terms of strength training, and mind you, this is just baseline testing, and I don't know if Ken wanted to add to that, to add to the fact that teams, and especially professional teams, and more so nowadays in high schools and so on, they do this to set a baseline, so you can see at a later date how well your athletes are progressing. Right. So if 6 weeks ago you scored X in a particular test, 6 weeks later, you should be scoring X squared or 2X to show that you have improved in strength. If you haven't done so, then something is wrong with the athlete or something wrong with the training regime. Something has to be corrected. Either you fire the coach or the trainer or tell the man to go fishing or something. But strength training, is generally and has been widely used, the push-up test. And let me add quickly though that especially in our circumstances here in Jamaica, for instance, or Trinidad and the Caribbean, in fact, where we can't afford a lot of expensive equipment. Right. So therefore, the emphasis is going to be on methods that are easy to apply, easy to do, and can do, with a large group of persons. Right. All that has to be borne in mind because there's a lot of tests out there, a lot of tests, different types of testing, a lot of them. So the one you choose has got to be suitable. But I was saying though that the push-up test, for instance, the simple everyday push-up test is a good measure of your upper extremity strength. And one strategy is to do it according to time. Yes. Where you, and I know the U.S. Army does this when they have in their recruits, where they're recruiting. Yes, they do. They have a 2-minute push-up test. And what they do is they have a timer and they say go and you do as many push-ups as you can within the 2-minute period. And of course, depending on where you score, how many you do, you'll get a score. you know, and of course, that score has to be bettered. Or in some cases, they tell you, you know, apply next year.
That's true, yeah.
Because you're really not suitable for this at this point, you know.
Right.
But
or even the ones who are in the military already, they have to be doing it on a regular basis to stay in their positions, to maintain a certain level of fitness. So there's that as well.
Right. Or, you know, you could be asked to try something else. But it's a very easy test to do, the push-up test. And as I said, to coaches, they cannot actually use, cut it to suit their needs. I just mentioned a 2-minute push-up test. For high school people, we could do 1 minute. The thing is that it's measurable. You can go back later on and measure it against where you started. So the kid was only able to do 10 push-ups in a minute. All right, we make a note of that. 6 weeks time, we test the kid again. The kid is now able to do 18 push-ups within the minute. That is a sign of progress. That is a sign that the kid has advanced. That is a sign that you have a stronger athlete in front of you, you know?
Right.
So that's the push-up test. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Ken. I'm not too sure if you were saying something.
I want to add something to it. So, so that is very important. Like I said before, that I was telling our viewers that usually you want to get a trained professional to do this, whether athletic trainer or maybe a certified strength and conditioning coach. But in the high school system here, they're not able to afford that, so I have to do it myself. So I pretty much wanted to share with you guys the push-up test, the scale that I use. So I use a scale, and just like John said, I usually have them do push-up, but I have them do it on their own time. I don't want them to rest too much. I want them to do it continuously. And so I do it based on sex. And I usually, my age group is like anywhere from 15 to 17 years old. All right.
Okay.
Some of them go up to 18 years old. So this is what I have based on the push-up. For the female, if the female do anything less than 15, then that would be considered low.
Oh.
Anything from 16 to 26, that would be average.
Okay.
Anything from 27 up, that would be considered high. For the male, anything less than 20 push-ups would be low.
Oh, stick a pin. Is this 2 minutes to a time or what? Or
usually I don't time them, but I don't allow them. It's continuous motion. It's pretty much like if you're doing it to reach.
So they can use the whole day to do it or what?
No. Like I said, it's pretty much like you say to them, go ahead and do some regular push-up, and the female are allowed to do, you know, the modified form where they can do it from their knee. But then you have to make sure it's continuous. You cannot rest at all. You got to go. So I don't use a stopwatch or anything, but you have to make sure that it's continuous. No break in between. So you go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So then, like I said, for the boys or the male, anything less than 20 would be low.
Okay.
21 to 34 would be average. 35 and up would be high.
Okay. Well, that's a good measure, you know, so they can, you know, so you can have standards and measurable standards.
Of course, and then like I said,
sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying the key though is to have measurable standards. Is to have standards you can replicate, that you can repeat, that you can, reliable, so you can go back to it and say, I'm gonna do the same thing again and see what results we get this time. I think that's the key. But the other thing I want to underscore is the importance of using these tests to your own liking, to your own situation, right? As I said, I could have used that a 1 minute test. I could have used a 30-second test. It really doesn't matter. What matters is how you know, at a where you can replicate it later on. You can do it again
I use the
and
same method as
repeat it,
before.
and it's reliable in terms. You know, I think that's, you know, so you can have a
Right.
That is correct.
right.
So,
You
so
know,
what I
but
do,
I think I like what you I like what you just described, Ken.
yeah. So
think
what I
that's great.
do, I usually make up a fast form, which is that fitness assessment form, and I have all of these categories,
Right,
and then
right. A standard form.
one in each athlete file. And then after doing this, like that I said before, what I'll do is I'll go as soon as the season starts, then we start doing it like every 2 weeks or so. We go back and do an assessment, because usually I incorporate all of these training, like strength training, at least once a week.
Okay,
So
but let me ask you that, as you mentioned 2 weeks. Is not a little bit short in terms of to repeat the test?
the reason why I do so is because we only do the training. I mean the weight training like maybe once or twice a week, and I just want to see the improvement, because as we work along, I want to see the improvement. But you guys are the clinicians, so guys can give me suggestion, and then I will implement it. And of course, my program is going to be.
Well, you seem to be doing quite well, so we can only add icing to the cake along the way. But let me speak a little bit though about lower body strength testing. Again, there's a you know, a variety of methods and so on out there. But again, I think a quite popular method of testing lower body strength is again the basic thing: a squat test. Right? And again, you can do this to time, or you know, and you do not use any bar. You can just use body weight, just a person's body weight going up and down into a, you know, completing a full squat, and record the score. And I'll tell you that I have been in situations before where we're testing athletes and just basic squatting up and down, no weights, no resistance, just body weight, and they're failing. You know, these are people, you know, who play, you know, and they're failing. Not to mention push-ups. You're like, whoa, you know, what the hell were you doing all this time? But they're failing. Just, you know, it goes to show the, you know, importance of training, proper training. But not to diverge too much, but yeah, the squat test is a classic lower body strength test. I'm sure there are others. I mean, if, Dr. Brown, if you want to perhaps mention anything along those lines. But you know,
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the squat test tends to be the most popular in terms of strength training. The different approaches. So when they're using the body weight squats, or as you mentioned for the push-ups, you can look at it in terms of strength. So we'll look at it in terms of strength endurance or muscular endurance. So
right,
the more repetitions you get, the more muscular endurance you have, and so on. But I realize like teams though, like teams that play like American football, if they have strength training equipment available to them, and if it's a strength power sport, they're gonna want to do things like the barbell squat test, and they're gonna try to get the 1 rep max, the 1 RM, which is basically the maximum amount of weight that you can lift one time and only one time. So that's a true strength test. But of course, not everyone you really want to be testing like that, or you know, and sometimes that can take a lot of
right, exactly. Not everyone was suitable for testing like that.
Right, exactly.
And
So
again, the issue of equipment too, you know, you have to have equipment now. And sometimes, so in my thinking, I'm always thinking about schools, you know, like high schools, how they function and how they can do these things that we talk about. And a lot of them won't be able to afford many things, you know. But that also speaks to that issue that we have to tackle here in Jamaica in terms of, as far as sports training is concerned, especially at that level, at the youth level.
Yes.
The need for proper equipment and facilities, because, and you know that, Dr. Brown, that there are times when we will get an athlete injured, and when you check their history of training, you realize that there has been this dotted. Their history is just dotted with faults and bad approaches to training, and sometimes in some cases not enough training. You know, and so they end up with injuries, and which becomes chronic, which becomes that much harder to rehabilitate.
Yes.
You know, so the emphasis again, you know, on making sure that high school, you know, level, that proper equipment should be in place. So that's why you have to give, you have to clap the KCs and the JCs and the Calabars and so on, because these old students, they put a lot of money.
They do. They realize the importance of it and they put money behind it.
Yes, sir. Of course,
Right.
of course.
So I guess many
And
of
this
the
is why they do
schools,
so
they
well.
support.
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
Right. I agree.
Exactly. They do well. You expect them to win champs. I mean, other schools are catching up now, you know.
Yes,
you know,
yeah,
especially in the girls department. You know, the girls home, and I can't remember all their names, but Heidel, and they are now catching up.
Yeah, right.
They are now catching up. Right. We can move on. That's Trent. Anything you want to add to that?
I just want to add something to that. So, like Dr. Brown stated, you know, I don't know if our listeners are aware of what Dr. Brown is talking about when we talk about 1 rep maximum, but it's just the amount of weight that you can do, and you just do 1 rep with that amount of weight. Tend to develop a lot more power as a result of that, and strength also. That is something that even some of the major high schools in Illinois, they do not understand that they're still doing multiple repetitions throughout the year with the footballers and so forth. So I happened to get some of the footballers in 2019. I was trying to tell them that, you know, that's not how it's supposed to be done. But of course, they've been doing it for years, so nobody want to change. You know, but I just wanted our listeners to understand what you're talking about. For my athletes, John and Dr. Brown, I use the curl up test because, you know, they're sprinters and middle distance runners. So I want to see, of course, how strong the abdomen is, because you know how vital the abdomen is when it comes to moving the legs. So we do the curl up test instead of the squat. The squat is done also, but for the evaluation itself, we do a curl up, and we don't do the sit-up.
Explain what that is, though.
Pardon me?
What is a curl up? You probably want to shed some light on that.
That's what I was going to do. Curl up is you know, it's different from the sit up that most people are used to. What you do, you're pretty much in the same position. Make a right angle with your knee at your knees, and then you're going to put your hands to your side, and then you're going to bring your thoracic cavity up from waist up to as close as possible to your knees. No, we tend to use that nowadays because we found out that the sit-up put a lot of stress on your neck and back. The curl up is a little bit better because it allows the lower section of your back to remain firm on the ground while you curl the rest of the body up. So that's why we're using that instead of the sit-up. We don't use the sit-up anymore. You know, and in that case, John, that's when I use timing. We see how many they can do per minute.
Okay.
How many they can do per minute. And I also have a log that I use for that. For the female, if they can do less than 35 curl up in a minute, then that's low. Anywhere from 36 to 35 is average. Remember, the age group I'm looking at right now is anywhere from 15 to 18, and anywhere from 56 up would be high. For the males, anything less than 40 would be low. 41 to 59, sorry, would be average. 60 plus would be high.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. Well, yeah. Well, you know, I want to move on to another test area, and that has to do with flexibility. Am I to speak on that, or can you deal that one? But no, flexibility is, as you well know, critical to just about every sport.
Right.
Any sport that calls for movement, dynamic movement, and big motor skills and so on, flexibility goes hand in hand with all of that. And I think the most basic test of flexibility that is quite popular and quite easy to do is what they call a sit and reach test.
Yeah.
And this here now tests your lower back structure, or your lower back musculature and structures, as well as your hamstrings. Right, and it's done simply by, and I'm sorry, we don't have a little slide to show people. But, you sit flat on the floor, and of course they have a little box, a measured box, that you put your both feet flat against that box. You lean forward as far as you can, putting both hands together. You lean forward, and they usually use your toes as zero. Where your toe is against it as zero. Anything beyond your toe is a plus. If you can't get to your toe, then it's a negative. Right? And of course, we have to make adjustments for some people who have, for instance, their upper body, or they have long arms as opposed to in proportion to their lower body, which is like a bit shorter, or vice versa. You have a person with long lower limbs and disproportionately shorter upper so they can't reach so far because so far to go. But the sit and reach test is really a simple measure, and all you do is lean forward. We make a mark at the point where you are, and if you're not we're not satisfied with the level where you are, then it's our duty to train you, improve your flexibility. That way we repeat the same test for 3 weeks down the line. We do the same sit and reach test again. It should have shown an improvement in your flexibility. So again, it's a very basic test. And of course, there are some modifications to that, where if you can't afford the box, the sit and reach box, which is already graded in inches, I think, you can do what they call a V-sit flexion test, where you just sit down, spread your legs a little bit, and reach forward as far as you can.
Right, and just measure that.
In front of you. And we mark that point, and then of course the objective is to improve on that. I don't have any standard scores like you did, Ken, in terms of what would be acceptable or so on. But from a physiotherapy point of view, we usually say you have a functional level of flexibility when you have, for instance, with a straight leg raise. You can actually raise the straight limb, lying flat on the floor now, raise the limb and get your hip joint at a 90-degree angle. Once you can get to 90-degree of hip flexion, we call it, then that's what we call a functional level of fitness. Mind you, this mightn't be enough for some sport, because if you're a gymnast, then
absolutely right. Some sports require more than average, so that's true.
You're exactly. But that is what we call functional fitness, and that's weighed against how you function in your activities of daily living. Can you reach? Can you tie your shoes lace? Can you put on your pants? Can you twist and turn? And that will suffice for that environment. Outside of that environment, where you have a sporting environment, it may call for a greater level of flexibility, or in some cases, as we have learned subsequently with sprinters, that too much flexibility in certain muscles are perhaps not the best thing, because of how you can generate power, and so you don't want to be too slack in certain areas, in certain muscles, So these are things we bear in mind.
Core muscles.
Yeah, right. There you go. All right. So sit and reach test for flexibility, hamstrings, and lower back musculature. Very easy to do. Critical. Can be repeated over and over again with all kind of people. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
That's the number one test that I use also, the sit and reach test. The only thing is that I use a roller, you remember the one they call a yardstick in Jamaica?
Yes, right.
I just use it down in front of them. The same thing, you gotta put it like that, and then you gotta reach.
That's a good idea.
Right, so that's what they call the V-sit flexion. That's a V-sit flexion test without the box. So
I like that actually. Just using the yard ruler. That's a good idea. I like that one.
Right, good idea. Yeah.
I also use because sometimes for my throws and so forth, I want to see the flexibility for the upper body. So I use what is called, I don't know if you're familiar, you should be familiar with it, what is called the back scratch test, whereby you use your right,
Oh,
your right
okay.
hand, you
Yeah,
point the fingers up towards your neck, you
yeah,
use the left hand, point the fingers down towards the butt, and then you measure in between.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That pretty much is testing the upper body flexibility. But
Or more
flexibility,
precisely, your shoulder.
right? Flexibility for us is one of the key areas. You know, I always point out to athletes that if they notice that Usain Bolt doesn't have a lot of injuries, mainly because if you notice his major focus is on hip flexor and hip extension, which has a lot to do with his flexibility. So as a result of that, then he usually is able to fire up the muscle a little bit quicker as a result of that. So usually I pointed out to them how important it is to make sure that you're flexible. But like you're saying, John, too much of anything is not very good.
I guess that's a lot. That's a basic law, eh?
Right.
It's a basic law. I'm living it, you ask me. All right, so that was the strength, basically. There's a lot of other protocols for strength testing. We just mentioned two. We want to move on, and we just mentioned, flexibility as well. We want to move on to what other area there? The endurance?
Yeah, endurance. Yeah, I'll touch on endurance a little bit, but I'm gonna ask you guys to come in and help me too because
Sure.
you guys are more
Yeah, go ahead,
familiar.
man. Go ahead, right away.
Okay, so usually for endurance, I'll do a test. I can use it. I can even use the push-up test for endurance also. I can use it for endurance also. If I'm looking at muscle endurance, okay, I can
Correct.
use
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Endurance.
right. And I mean, yeah, right. If I'm looking at muscle endurance, I can use that. But what concerns me most in the off season is the person's aerobic capacity. So usually what I'll have them do an aerobic fitness testing, which is usually a 1.5 mile run.
Right.
And then I look at how fast the person is able to recover. And I have a scale that I usually use. I don't have it with me right now. A chart that I usually use to determine whether or not the person recover as soon as I wanted them to recover. And then I'll also try to test the anaerobic capacity, whereby I have the athlete do what is called a 30-second max run, whereby the athlete is going to be running as fast as they can for 30 seconds. And then I also use whatever distance is covered and so forth, and the time to determine whether or not the athlete reached the level that I'm expecting them to reach, so I can make my plan as to how I'm going to develop a plan of training for that particular individual.
Right. Right. But I probably just should have
That's a good one.
yeah. I'm going to throw in though the another standardized test that again can be used for not necessarily the fittest cohort, but it's what they call a 3-minute step test. The 3-minute step test is just a matter of person stepping up and down on a box that's about 12 inches high, up and down, and again we time you to see, so within the 3 minutes you go as much as you can, and then we can check your heart rate. At the end of that, we can even check your heart rate. Right? We check your heart rate, your exercises heart rate, and make a note of that. Right? And then again, the objective is that after you would have trained for a period of time, if we were to repeat this test, the heart rate, your exercising heart rate should be lowered somewhat, which means your heart has become more efficient. Your stroke volume, all those things are now more, your whole cardiovascular system has improved, which is what the athlete wants, So again, very basic tests. I like the one that you what Ken mentioned is I would want to think a higher level testing in terms of, you know, the athlete. What I mentioned is perhaps at a lower level, and it, you know, can Google it, the 3-minute step test. Very popular, easy to do, don't require much thing, and safe. You know, and safe in terms of you know, any risks that could be involved with someone.
I was just thinking, John, not to cut you off. So the 3-minute step test, and you and I have discussed this before. 'Cause we're speaking about athletes, but even persons, you know, regular, let's say adults, sedentary adults who want to join the gym program. The 3-minute step test is a nice little test to do quickly, just to kind of gauge your fitness level before the start and the full-on exercise program. So yes, a safe test that can be done as a basic measurement.
So true, so true, so true, so true, very true.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was about to say. Go ahead, Ken.
I'm sorry. The endurance. Like, I want to add that the endurance is focused in muscles that undergo repetitive and sustained contraction. So you know, pretty much you want to focus on those areas when you're dealing with endurance.
Right.
Yes.
And John, we're gonna, for the next area we're gonna cover, when we're done with this, I want Dr. Brown to get more involved, because I don't want to get comments later on saying we didn't allow Dr. Brown to talk. You know, or listeners somewhat get a little bit tired of hearing me and John sometimes. So of course we're gonna allow Dr. Brown to talk. But do you want to add anything more to endurance, Dr. Brown, John?
I think that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, well, different sports might be different. I tend to work with swimmers. So, of course, now swimmers, although you might see them jog occasionally, they, of course, would test their endurance by jogging. Obviously, it's going to be tested in the pool. The coach that I work with, I need to ask him again how he does it. But they have their methods of testing endurance, of course, using swimming. But similar concepts in terms of testing endurance on land, where you're jogging and seeing how far they can go, how much distance they do in a certain amount of time, and so on. So, as with, you know, with all sports, testing can tend to be specific based on the sport. So I guess that's one thing I would really add to it.
Definitely, yeah. As you're talking, I was thinking about it, and I thought about swimmers too, and I thought about triathletes, and I thought about
especially triathletes, yes.
Right,
yes,
and I thought about those guys who does cross country and marathon, and those guys. And isn't that like testing more, like, to be more specific, like a cardiovascular endurance though?
Yeah, more so cardiovascular endurance. I mean, obviously some muscular endurance will be involved as well. You could test that separately, but definitely the cardiovascular endurance, that's the predominant thing, especially for the endurance athletes. So like your cross country, as you said, triathletes, definitely cardiovascular endurance.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay, so John, we should move on to body composition, or percentage body fat. Can we move on to that now?
Yeah, sure. I think I probably could ask Dr. Brown to speak a little bit on that.
Sure, I don't mind. All right, so body composition. Well, basically, as you guys know, maybe most persons have an idea. Your body composition is basically looking at your body and how much of your body is really muscle mass versus fat. So, for example, typically persons say, you know, they want to lose weight, but to be specific, what they really want to lose is body fat, which you guys know of course. And there are different methods to actually measure or to test or assess your body fat levels. So you have what I call a bit with our fitness tests in general. You have what I call your field tests versus your, let's just say, your lab tests. Then, so I'll speak about the lab tests first. So the lab tests are the ones that they're done like in a laboratory setting with like specialized equipment and so on. Lot of technological equipment, of course, that's more expensive. So most schools, most facilities already have that available to them. But those are like seen as the gold standard in terms of testing. They're more accurate, more research based, and so on. But of course, not really accessible to most persons. So of course, you're gonna rely on your field test, which, you know, your average person, but not so much your average person necessarily, but most schools can have that available to them. A popular one that tends to be done is, of course, the body mass index. You guys know the body mass index, which is
BMI.
It's not so much, maybe it's not truly a body composition measurement, but it gives a kind of gauge in terms of relating your body weight to your height. So, it has its limitations, but also has its advantages. So persons tend to use the BMI, especially clinically. So medical doctors know when they're assessing their patients, they're going to check their BMI, the body mass index. But again, it has its limitations because so Ken, for example, some of the athletes that you have, you probably have you work with some of the footballers, right? Is it American footballers you work with?
No, actually, the footballers also do track and field, and so that's how I work.
Right.
I don't work with them during the off season because the off season is strictly football workout.
Right. But those guys, no, those guys are going to tend to be big, strong, muscular guys. So how the body mass index works, it as I said, there's an equation to it. I won't get into the details of the equation, but it compares your actual body weight to your height, and it's like a kind of a ratio, so to speak. So basically, it's say, okay, at this particular height in meters squared, you should be about this particular weight, and if your weight is over that height, then you might say, okay, you might be a bit overweight and so on. Now, the trick with that is that it only takes into account your actual weight and your actual height, but it doesn't take into account your actual body composition. So, Ken, for some of those athletes who are very muscular, their body mass index might be very high. So you might say to them, so I have some figures here actually. So, for example, now if your body mass index tends to be between say 25 to 29.9, yeah, that's a general figure. You might be considered as being overweight. And if it's as high as maybe between 30 and 39.9, then you're considered obese. But the funny thing is, if you use that figure alone, then some athletes who are very muscular, they might be considered obese by body mass index. So it has its limitations, and you have to be careful how you apply the BMI measurement to some person.
False negative.
False negative, basically, or false positive for some.
Yeah, that's a key point you just mentioned there, because certainly, and I've seen it before. Bodybuilders, again, that we mentioned, they're barely have any body fat.
Right.
But they have a lot of mass.
Right.
So
right. That's it.
Body mass index is concerned. They are obese.
Yeah, they're considered obese, which is
very that if I had a choice in terms of testing body fat and composition and so on, I'd always go for the caliper.
Right.
The use of a caliper to actually measure your skin fold and the amount of fat that there is.
Right. That's it.
I think that is, it's not the easiest thing to go buy. They're not cheap. But if you have one, I think that's a more useful tool than the BMI,
Oh, it is.
It
gives you more information.
It can be used generally, but I think the caliper is a more accurate measure of your body fat, and speaks. It tells you the language that you are, that you understand more. So
you're quite right. No, it really. So with the calipers now, of course, you might remember the different techniques. You can do a 3-site measurement or a 7-site measurement. Basically, you take the calipers and you pinch the skin at particular locations, and you plug it into certain equations, and you use that to actually get out a figure or an estimate of your body fat percentage. So yeah, the calipers will definitely give you far more information.
Yes, man. And I think it's especially better for women too.
Calipers.
Women generally tend to carry a higher percentage naturally
in the lower body
of body fat than men. And sometimes, especially women in the gym, they get confused. They come to the gym and they train for 2 or 3 weeks, and they go home and they go on a scale.
Right.
And they start to fall like, I put on weight, and they're crying and saying they're not losing any weight.
Yes.
I said, well, what kind of weight do you want to lose? Or,
and that's the key thing.
Yeah. But they will say to you in the same breath, but my pants dropping off for me.
Exactly.
My pants dropping off. So, well, why is your pants dropping off? Your pants dropping off because you're losing body fat. But the scale tells you that you weigh more because you put on bone, you put on muscle, you put on nerve tissue. All those things add body mass. So it's very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah,
it is.
I just want to add, Dr. Brown, that what I want the listeners to be aware of is that the body mass that you're talking about is pretty much testing your body type. Your body type, right?
Well, there's a little relationship between the body type. So when you say body type, you talk about the mesomorph, ectomorph, and endomorph.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So like so the mesomorph, of course, that's the ideal. The mesomorph is the person that tends to naturally seem to have, they carry more muscle mass and less body fat, and that's a really athletic kind of body type. So if you test their body fat, their body composition, they tend to have lower body fat and of course higher muscle mass. Your endomorph is a person that's naturally kind of bigger and heavier and so on. So they might tend to naturally, kind of naturally have more body fat. It might have some muscle mass, but their body fat level tends to be higher.
Right.
And of course, ectomorph now, if you speak about athletes, for example, ectomorphs tend to be ideal for like your long distance sports, so like your cross country athletes. Those are ideally going to be ectomorphs, so they have lower
They
body
all
fat
tend to be that
naturally.
way. Yeah,
Right.
they all tend to be that way.
Exactly,
Lean
exactly.
and lanky,
Exactly.
as we call it in Jamaica, lanky.
Right, exactly. But they're very good at the endurance, exactly.
Yeah.
So there can be a relationship between the body type and the body composition and body fat percentage and so on.
Yeah, very interesting.
So Dr. Brown and John, it's worth mentioning, I think John is aware of it, that we have some members on the Brosis forum who are very much interested in wellness. And so I just want to go a little bit deeper into this because I'm thinking that some of these guys might want to go home and do their own calculation. So the calculation, guys, is very simple. It's very simple. All you got to do is get your weight and divide your weight by your height in inches. In inches. So if you're 6 feet, you're going to multiply 6 by 12 inches. You're going to divide that body weight by whatever that number comes out to be. I'm not Mr. Donkey, so I can't give you what the exact number would be. But anyway, that's how you do it. And I have a chart, guys, if you want to get an idea of what it should be. So we talk about, we're going to look at it from male female perspective, and if you look at it from ectomorph, right, for the female it would be anything under 1.5 pound per inch. All right. Metamorph, which means, so ectomorph would be lean, mectomorph would be muscular, would be anywhere from 1.9 to 2.5 pounds per inch. That's for the female. Endomorph, which is heavy, anything over 2.5 pounds per inch. The male would be under, for ectomorph, would be under 2 pounds per inch. Mesomorph would be 2 to 2.8 pounds per inch, and endomorph would be over 2.8 pounds. All right, and I was hoping that, I don't know if Dr. Brown can explain a little bit more the body fat. We talk about one method already that we use, the skin fold test. I came across one, Dr. Brown, that is called the bioelectrical impotence analyzer. Do you know anything about it and how it's used?
Yeah, man. It's the bioelectric impedance assessment. So they have different ones. You have some bigger machines and you have some that are like handheld. But basically, I'll speak for like the handheld one. It's a machine that you hold, but you put in your information, your weight, your height, and so on, and you hold the machine. And what it does, it sends a very light, imperceptible electrical current through your body. So you really don't feel the current. But what the current does, it goes to your body and brings back a reading into the machine that gives you an estimate of your body fat percentage. And it's based on the principle that, of course, but fat, of course, is an insulator. So when the current goes through your body, essentially, I guess you could say, essentially, the more resistance the current encounters, or the longer it takes to go through, it means it's a higher body fat level.
Right.
So when it comes back into the machine, it kind of does something in terms of plugging some equations and gives you an estimate of your body fat level. So the higher the body fat is, the greater the impedance, the greater the resistance, and so the greater the reading that comes out of the machine. But like I said, you have different ones. You have a handheld one. You have some scales some bathroom scales where you can stand on it, and it does the same thing. Where once you stand on it barefooted, it sends a current through your body, and gives a reading basically. So that is your electrical impedance.
John, we got a little bit more time, so I wanted to talk about an area that I also pay attention to. It's the upper and lower body coordination, because the fact that we have so many athletes who who have problem when it comes to their joints. They have a lot of injury as it relates to joints, ACL injury, PCL, and also sometimes they have problem with tendons problem, Achilles tendons and shin splint. Okay, so usually what I have them do is I have them do a test whereby I have them stand on one leg, and then I pay attention to see how, like for about a minute, and see how long they can hold it for before they start wobbling on one leg or before they put on the second leg. Do you guys do that in Jamaica also?
Yes.
I know we as physiotherapists tend to do that, especially.
Yeah. Therapists tend to do that. And if it's done so much in the let's say the sports training world, high school and so on. But in clinics and so on, that's a standard assessment that we do, especially with some of the geriatric populations and so on.
Right. Especially them.
Populations,
Right.
And then I also use it not only for the test during the off season, but I also use it for exercise to strengthen the joint, to strengthen the knee joint. Because those are some of the areas, like we talk about it, I think in the last show, John, that a lot of times people do not pay attention to those areas, even though injuries are so common when it comes to the ACL and so forth. But there tend to be a way too little focus in those areas. So I use that also and the step up on the plyo box that you talk about, John. I also use that one to strengthen that area also.
But mind you, we have what I'm about to say is scratch the surface basically of testing. Because
Very much
just mentioned, a lot more. I mean, for instance, they have what they call mobility testing that can be done. Your mobility, how mobile you are in doing activities. There are kinesthetic testing that you can do as well. And again, it's sport specific. Some sports demand away that you have precise balance. You got to have that. If you don't have that, then don't bother. So that comes up with testing that is emphasized. There's also a test called the hurdle step. They call a hurdle step, where you just step on. Basically, all you're doing is stepping over a pre-established height hurdle, and just watching you stepping over those hurdles can tell us a story of how flexible you are, how controlled. Because for you to step over a hurdle, you have to bear your body weight on one limb.
That's right. Very true.
Viewing how you bear your body weight on one limb tells a story. If you're compensating, and all these things. So we've only scratched the surface, but what we wanted to do was to highlight the key areas that high schools or clubs even could focus on in terms of testing. And again, those are, just to summarize, strength testing, basic strength testing, which we mentioned, two areas, two methods, flexibility testing, endurance testing, and an assessment of your body fat ratio and percentage. Yes, and I think with all of that, you can build a good team if you can fix those things. You can build a good team, man. I don't think we have much time left. We're gonna have to sign off now. But Ken, you want to do your usual thing about subscribe, asking people to subscribe and so on, man?
Yeah, very much so. But before I want to conclude that the fitness assessment test, you guys don't realize it, but I have a list. That the fitness assessment test, it pinpoints potential fitness problem, of course, that can lead to serious injuries. So hopefully, coaches and athletic trainers out there, they should make sure they teach their athletes conditioning exercises to help improve whenever weaknesses are detected. so that they do not have serious problems during the season. So we want to make sure, admonish them, make sure that all the coaches who are on our potential prospective coaches, make sure you pay attention to this, that you check for any potential problem that show up in this assessment, and make sure you design a training plan to take your conditioning, so that this does not result into some serious problem later on and you lose one of your key athletes and so forth.
Right.
So it's very important.
I have to jump in. Like when I hear that kind of argument, I have to always jump in, because it brings me to the worrisome point of the need for, or maybe the absence of, specialists in the training systems, in the high school training system, and even the club systems. The need because what you're describing there is not really the role of the coach, and should not be the role of the coach. We should have a person who is so trained to carry out these basic functions, these preparatory functions that we have all just mentioned. Leave the coach to do the coaching in terms of, technique and skills and strategy, and moving players from one point to another point. That's the coach's job. The trainer is a different set of skills, a skill set that, and I think the coaches sometimes can't blame them. They try to do all these things, and sometimes they fall short. So either we have to go back and train the trainers or train the coaches, or we train more people who can do these things. And I think UTech is doing that now, and I think GC Foster has something like that going on, if I'm not mistaken. And I think UTech has a program. But we need to have these professionals. And I think between, I'm thinking here that from henceforth, we're going to see a rise in the level of professionalism in sport. In certain
I think it's already happening.
Yeah, it's already happening.
It's already happening.
What I said for that football cap, we call it down by Santander. Oh Lord. The football club. Hope, yeah. They are very professional. Very professional.
Yeah, but John, that was just assuming, because you had mentioned the different areas of assessment. That was just assuming that the assessment was already done by some professional, whether it be a strength and conditioning coach or a trainer. So then that would be left up to the coach to organize maybe the conditioning part of it, or to carry out the conditioning part of it with the athlete. Here in America, it's pretty much the same thing like Jamaica. In Illinois, I can talk about Illinois. The high schools really do not have, they have the trainer, but usually the only time you see the trainer is when somebody has an injury. Then you see the trainer show up and start, and they send them to the trainer room. But usually the trainer does not come out and do any of these assessments as such. So again, it's up to the coaches. But I do agree with you. I always tell my athletes the only way I get involved with a trainer's responsibility if there is no trainer. But the moment something happens, even though I know what I'm supposed to do, I tell them go to the trainer, because they're trained to do that. I'm trained to coach. My knowledge that I have in the area is just in case. So I'm never going to be the frontline person when it comes to injury. I leave that to you guys, the professionals, to deal with that.
Yeah, and so it should be. So it should be. So it should be.
Yes, definitely, and we have to pay attention to that, because a lot of times we get so involved and want to take up the responsibility of other people. I always tell them I don't do anything like that. I want to make sure that these guys do what they're supposed to do, and I stand back and I look at what they're doing and so forth. But then I leave it to you guys as the professionals. But
indeed. All right. Okay. So
yes. So we have come to the end of another program, but I want our listeners to remember that this program is a sports education program, and therefore, if you're listening in as you do your workout and your wellness, this program will definitely benefit you. And so we want to say, once again, much thanks to Dr. Brown for being able to show up on such a short notice and to come in and add some valuable information to the program. We want to thank our listeners for being patient with us until we got the program started and things up and running. We want to encourage you again to make sure that you like, subscribe, share the program. And once again, we're inviting your comments. We enjoy comments because we're always trying to have this program growing. And Dr. Brown, once again, it's always an open invitation. Whenever you're ready to come in, just let us know and you'll be in.
Sure, will do. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
So I want to say goodbye to everybody, and I wish everybody a very happy new year. And please remember to stay fit.
COVID free.
Yes. All right. That too.
All right. Yes.
All right. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Good job.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.